Bruce arrives at Culver University in Virginia about 16 days later.
How did Bruce get from Mexico to Virginia in little over 2 weeks, with virtually no resources as a fugitive? It's a shocking jump.
Especially with how good the movie has been about attention to detail so far. It took the time to explain where Bruce got new clothes, yet completely skips this huge journey. Bruce is unable to get into the building without an ID. He struggles for what to do before focusing on Betty's name. He decides to wait outside until she appears, to turn to her for help. This is where Betty comes into the picture. Thus far, she has only existed in Bruce's memories and regrets. She is what drives his search for a cure, so that he can return to her without fear of hurting her again. He watches from a distance, longingly, only to find that she's with someone, Leonard Sampson. Bruce appears heartbroken. He probably believes that Betty has moved on since he left all those years ago. In that case, he decides not to interfere with her life, despite how much he must miss her. Bruce instead goes to a pizzeria. The owner, Stanley, is an old friend of his and Betty's. Stanley offers Bruce a place to sleep and tells him about Betty's new boyfriend.
Yeah, he's a head shrink, but a really nice guy.
Good. That's good.
Bruce genuinely cares for Betty, so even if it hurts to see her with someone else, he still acknowledges that it's good her new boyfriend is a nice guy. Bruce uses the cover of being a pizza delivery man to gain access to the building. To get into the computer lab, he uses pizza to bribe the security guard, as well as Roger Harrington, who will one day be a teacher at Midtown School of Science and Technology. This is another example of Bruce being clever. During a flashback to the day of the incident, Bruce gives the unhappy Betty a cheeky wink. He is so sure that nothing will go wrong that he acts flippantly.
He's like that, super smart scientist, and too smart for his own good.
Bruce displays overconfidence, just as Ross alluded to earlier. The only issue I have with this is the lack of exploration. This is it in terms of establishing Bruce's past overconfidence. One line of dialogue and a short moment from a flashback. It's never brought up again. Sort of. Bruce logs into a computer with Betty's credentials. Conveniently, they haven't changed in the years since he's been gone. Usually, you'd be forced to reset your password every few months. Also, why is her username her full name and title? It even has spaces, which no username has. I suspect they wanted it to be obvious that these were Betty's credentials. A random string of numbers and letters wouldn't have communicated that. The data from the experiment is gone. Dejected, Bruce opens an encrypted messaging program to chat with Mr. Blue. Why does the computer have this program? I imagine the university would want to prevent illegal activity from occurring on the computer. And having an untraceable messaging program on them would definitely raise that risk. Could Betty have downloaded it personally? Unlikely. The university would be capable of restricting what programs could be downloaded. However, this contrivance is inconsequential. None of the following events in the movie rely on this short exchange. Bruce tells him the data is gone. Mr. Blue says he can't help him. That's it. At Stanley's, Bruce prepares to go on the run again. Betty and Sampson arrive and talk to Stanley. This makes sense, as it was previously stated that Betty is a good friend of his. Betty then sees Bruce walk in on them. Everything but the music goes silent as we focus on Betty's reaction. She immediately stands to follow after Bruce, completely ignoring Sampson mid-conversation.
They share so much in their hearts together, so the loss of that, along with an accident of some kind, was just very traumatic. The point that he comes into her life, she's trying to recover from that, I guess, in some way still, and has vaguely moved on, and she thinks she sees a ghost. It's that moment how, when you're in love with someone, you will go into a crowded room and you might see their face for a second, because everywhere you turn, you see them.
This directorial choice does much to put the audience in Betty's perspective. So far, we've only seen Betty through Bruce's eyes. She was a memory, a regret of his past, something painfully out of reach. Now we see through her eyes, and we find something similar. She feels the same longing for a ghost of her past.
Bruce.
She's not quite moved on like Bruce fears. She confronts Stanley, but we cut away before getting his response. We can guess what he might have said based on events to come, but there will be some confusion. Betty tracks down Bruce, and she begs him not to leave. She cares deeply for him, even after years apart. This love she feels for him will be important in how it affects her perspective of the Hulk. Betty drives him to her house, and they're careful to ensure he remains hidden. She gives him a flash drive with the data he was looking for. She managed to get it before the military confiscated it all. How could she have done this when she was hospitalized at the time? I imagine the military would have acted quickly, especially with Ross's goals.
Does the general know that you have this?
No, I haven't spoken to him in a couple of years.
You have to be sure.
I don't understand why we can't just go in there together and talk to him.
At first, I thought it was overly naive of Betty to think a conversation with Ross could solve this issue. Then I considered that the military story, that Bruce stole military secrets, might not have been what the public has been told.
He told me what he wanted to do. He wants to dissect it so that he can replicate it. He wants to make it a weapon.
She doesn't know that Ross has created this lie, and that he wants to turn Hulk into a weapon. From her perspective, Bruce ran off after the incident for some unknown reason, possibly fear or shame. But we know the public was told something.
Whatever you've heard about me, it's not true.
I always knew it. I mean, you know how I felt about you two.
But what that is remains unknown. I would have liked this to be clearer. It's difficult to know what the average person thinks about this situation. This is particularly important because of Samson's actions a little later. As Bruce explains that Ross wants to turn Hulk into a weapon, we cut to Ross retrieving the experimental super soldier serum to be administered to Blonsky. The implication is clear. Ross sees Blonsky as a potential weapon to be used. This is subtle foreshadowing that, like the Hulk, this experiment of his is also destined to blow up in his face. Bruce insists on leaving in the morning. There is awkwardness in their conversation.
You have everything you need?
Yeah.
They both want to be together, but Bruce is keeping her at a distance. We get a visual symbolizing their longing.
They're both sleeping on the same side of the bed. They should be sleeping on their side of the bed.
And then there's the matter of Betty's boyfriend, Samson. They don't seem to spare him a thought. While it's understandable given their history, it's still kind of shitty.
I love Ty Burrell. He's so great in this movie because he's so good at playing the nice guy that just gets screwed over.
And what happened to Samson after Betty left Stanley's? Given the information he must have received, why wouldn't he go check on Betty at her home? Knowing exactly what Stanley told them might clear this up. As it stands, it's like the movie temporarily forgets about him.
We're giving you a very low dose only. Any side effect, we stop and you're off team.
This is a promise he will fail to keep due to his own motivations.
You'll get 2 separate infusions. One into the deep muscle, one into the bone marrow centers.
That last one looks as painful as a motherfucker. The camera lingers on Blonsky's pained expression. We are shown that Blonsky is willing to endure horrible pain for power. The scene is unpleasant and full of dread. There is no fanfare.
The design of this, I love. This kind of
it's
stuff.
the same thing. It's like, you know, Dr. Frankenstein's lab, you know, it hurts because it looks painful.
Yeah.
The next day, Bruce and Betty go to Culver University to say goodbye. Bruce spots a couple of soldiers preparing an ambush and makes a run for it. Because of this error, Bruce gets the chance to flee, leading to a Hulk out and his escape.
Damn it, we'd have got snipers on target in 3 more minutes. I want to know who jumped the gun.
This is an important throwaway line. If the military knew that he would be at Culver University, in an open area, they could easily set up a sniper to trank him, and Bruce wouldn't have had time to react. This line explains why they were unable to do that. Some may find this too convenient. It's understandable. They don't capture Bruce due to the fuck-up of a couple random soldiers. If Ross or Blonsky had made a mistake that was character-motivated, this sequence would be more earned. Blonsky far outpaces the other soldiers, displaying a great leap in physical prowess.
Yeah, that's super run.
This is super run, so that's actually you.
Yeah. They put you between these two cranes on cables, and they drop these weights and pull you, and your legs are pumping like crazy, but you're going about 40 miles an hour.
So we drop, and it just sends him. He probably got running about 30, 40 miles an hour at one point.
Usain Bolt, the fastest man in the world, has a recorded top speed of about 27 miles per hour. Blonsky runs 40 miles per hour, without looking the least bit tired. Why is Blonsky not wearing a helmet? The serum wouldn't protect him from a bullet in the head.
Sir, a helmet can interfere with my psychic abilities.
I think a bullet might interfere with them more.
They probably wanted it to be easier for the audience to pick out Blonsky among the other soldiers, so they removed his helmet to individualize him. I think there are more reasonable ways they could have accomplished this.
Blonsky, not yet!
Sir?
Blonsky is eager to face Hulk again, but he still pulls back when Ross orders it. He has his own goals, but he's still a team player. For now. Bruce runs into the building and seizes a moment when he's lost them to swallow the flash drive. He's thinking ahead. If he hulks out, he'll still have the data. Even in the heat of the moment, he can think creatively and intelligently. Betty stands in front of one of the approaching vehicles and shouts for General Ross.
Sir.
Dad!
Ross, being Betty's father, explains how Betty would know which vehicle he was traveling in. She would have some military knowledge growing up the daughter of a general. More importantly, this reveal recontextualizes previous scenes. General Ross's anger at Bruce in the hospital was the anger of a father at the man who hurt his daughter. It also explains his reaction to seeing Betty's photo in Brazil. This humanizes Ross by hinting at a new layer to his motivations. Ross tries to get Betty in the vehicle, showing that he cares about her safety. Bruce gets trapped in an overpass. They shoot canisters of knockout gas in there with him.
Get her back here!
Ross cares about Betty. He's also obsessed with capturing Bruce. He says,
"Get her back here!"
because he cares about her, but is compelled to keep his eyes on Bruce rather than chase after her himself. His attention is split between these two desires. Bruce transforms into the Hulk. It's obscured by smoke, similar to how it was obscured by darkness at the factory. This changes when Hulk bursts from the overpass and is revealed clearly for the first time.
Now she'll see.
Ross wants Betty to see Bruce as the dangerous monster that he sees, but Betty will continuously challenge this point of view. The soldiers open fire, and Hulk fights back. During the ensuing battle, this one vehicle tries to ram itself into Hulk for some reason. Doesn't seem like a very smart plan. Hulk smashes it on a metal statue. I feel with him. I also hate modern art. Ross sends in Blonsky. As he shoots, Hulk tears off pieces of the statue to use as makeshift shields and weapons. Ross is amazed to see Blonsky fight Hulk and not get squashed immediately. Blonsky is able to lead Hulk towards a couple sound cannons, where he gets caught in a sonic trap. The sound cannons disorient Hulk and place immense physical pressure on him.
Please, please get back! Stop! Get away!
Hulk likely interprets Betty's cries as her being in danger, so Hulk forces himself to stand and keep fighting. The thing that motivates him to fight, even more than self-defense, is the need to defend someone he cares about. Betty's feelings for Bruce have extended to Hulk. Even with the destruction, she still views him as Bruce. And it is this care that encourages Hulk to not give up, indicating that there is truth in her perspective. Hulk uses one of the metal pieces to shield himself against the sonic waves, allowing him to stand. He aims and throws the other piece, destroying one of the cannons. He then jumps free and destroys the other. Blonsky starts shooting Hulk again.
Is that it?
Blonsky, pull back now.
This is the first time Blonsky has disobeyed Ross's orders.
Is that all you got?
Why does Blonsky confront Hulk like this? What does he think will happen? Is the idea that Blonsky has gotten high off his new powers and is overestimating his abilities? He did win the last confrontation they had, but here he just taunts Hulk and takes a kick from him. Did he think he would be quick enough to dodge it? Because, he was wrong. Hulk kicks Blonsky. Hard. He flies face first into a tree and collapses into a bloody broken mess. They cut away from the initial strike and obscure Blonsky's face after impacting the tree. This serves to imply greater brutality than one might have felt if these events were shown normally. It's as if the act is so violent, they can't even show you directly. The mess that has become of Blonsky is greater in the imagination of the audience. That leads nicely into one aspect of the movie I'd like to talk about: how it portrays the consequences of violence. The movie goes out of its way to show the impact of violent action in a relatively realistic way. When Betty elbows a soldier in the face, we are shown his bloody nose. I don't think anyone would have thought twice if the soldier appeared unaffected the next time we saw him. But realistically, getting an elbow in the face can easily lead to a broken nose. Even the more fantastical elements are given the same weight. The sound cannon trap is depicted as to effectively convey Hulk's pain. His skin and muscles ripple against the pressure, and he covers his ears against the piercing, high-pitched warbling of the sonic blast.
We always reminded people that it has to be reality-based.
Yeah, we have to believe. And Ed was the same. Supposing this is real, then how do you...
Absolutely,
yeah.
Look at that. Look at his... Look at the jeans. Look at the ripples in his skin. I really wanted to be as painful to the audience as it is for the Hulk. So literally the sound kills your ears.
This is especially important given the conflict of the movie. Bruce fears how the Hulk destroys and harms. For the audience to be invested in this, the consequences of the Hulk's violence must be meaningful. This also ties into creating stakes. You can't fear for a character's life if they're arbitrarily immune to the consequences of violence. General Ross orders everyone to fall back. Betty approaches Hulk. At the same time, Ross orders the gunship to open fire. This is a major contrivance. Why did the soldiers just let Betty walk up to the Hulk? Why did Ross just let Betty walk up to the Hulk? Are we supposed to believe not one of them was paying attention? All of them are focused on bringing down the Hulk, and Betty just walks straight towards the Hulk. And no one noticed? One of Ross's primary motivations is protecting Betty, yet it's like she ceases to exist. I mean, come on. The soldiers holding Betty just vanish between cuts. What the fuck? Another major contrivance is that the gunship is positioned perfectly to not be able to see Betty standing in front of the Hulk. Because if it had seen Betty, there's no way it would have fired. If either of these contrivances hadn't occurred, Betty's involvement in the rest of the story changes drastically. Samson arrives and watches what happens next. The gunship fires and Hulk shields Betty. When Ross finally realizes Betty is out there, he orders the gunship to stop. Hulk uses one of the pieces of metal to bring it down, shielding Betty from the explosion. No! Ross is distraught when he thinks Betty might have been killed, dispelling any doubt about his care for her. This is important, because his gruff exterior and estranged relationship with Betty might have made the audience doubt his feelings for her. Hulk emerges with an unconscious Betty, glaring at Ross, who watches in shock. Hulk then fades away into the smoke. This makes it clear to the audience, and more importantly, to Ross, that Hulk cares about Betty's safety, and even blames Ross for putting her in danger.
Ross hasn't saved Betty, Hulk has. Hulk is a hero now.